The committee of the whole meeting for August 2nd. The next agenda item is a continuation of the discussion on the ARPA funding. We're going to get a status update from Terry, and then I think we're going to open it up for discussions on best steps forward. Good morning.
Good morning. I set a paper out on your desk. It's similar to the one we did last April, was actually when I came before, April 20-something. So this has been updated a little bit. We have not approved any more projects to use ARPA money with or for, but we have put two projects on the list for studies that are being examined right now. The GIS RFP went out and the space needs study, which we are in the starting point of the space needs study, but we have not signed a contract or get a true estimate of what the cost of that is yet. So that was in the pink. Those two are still in discussion. They haven't come to committee or board for allocation of funds yet. There also is the fair one that is still unallocated. It's committed by committee, but that's the one that we're working with the Delta Group to see if there's other funding for. So what we have committed by resolution and have actually got signed contracts and have started to spend is the first green line where it says allocated by resolution, obviously, which is $3.363 million. Out of that money that you have allocated, we have spent to date $1.739 million. And you can see on what projects we've done and how far they've come along and, you know, where we're at with those allocations. So what we've gotten is committed funds totally. If we take in the three that are still in a little bit of a discussion, we're at $3.953 million. So we've committed about half of our allocation from the ARPA money. Are there any questions on that page? The fair is more towards the bottom of that front page, and that actually went to committee in February, but we have not made the actual allocation by resolution. Yep. Bottom of the first page, this one
It's
right
yellow.
here. This is the fair. Egg Society is the fair. Okay, yep.
Okay, what's page 2?
Page 2 is a list of the various other projects that have been discussed, and, you know, I apologize if there's something not on there. I try to keep track, but, through all the discussions, but this is where we're at today, with projects that have been brought up. So the first one is the Board of Elections machines. We have not done anything with that allocation. We estimated that to be about $550,000. The panel trusses and the traffic signal, those were on our discussion. We ended up making different arrangements for the funding on that, and we have already purchased and paid for those. So those are off the list. We have the build out of the third floor, which was originally intended maybe to go for the conflict defender and the $600,000. If you do that with conflict defender for that purpose, then that $600,000 will come from ILS, and that will eliminate that, and this money can be used for something else. Or if you take a different location for that project, that still is in this discussion for build out of that third floor. So either way, there's $600,000 that we've talked about for that. The new roof was on this building, $500,000 of the estimate. We never came up with an estimate for the water tower on the roof. That was a wish list thing. Windows for the county office building were estimated for about $250,000. We took the Public Works building off because it's a large project and we'll figure out something different for that. Still have the Episcopal Church parking or property on the list, which is both the church and the house. No estimate has been given for that renovation. Parking lot, that was been discussed. Municipal monies has been discussed, but no allocation of money. The housing study was a discussion. If we're gonna do a housing study, we estimated 80,000. Brownfield inventory study, 50,000. Clarity put in a request for 300,000. Water and sewer study, there's, funding available for that could potentially have $100,000 of a county match, so we put that $100,000 in this list. Town award requested, town of Scioto requested. Those are just estimates. We just put in a number there to have a placeholder for those. Countywide master trail plan was discussed for a possible allocation of $100,000. A combined medical facility, there was a study that has been discussed for that, which we estimated maybe a potential match of $500,000 on that. And there has been on the discussion list, retention bonus for part-timers that didn't get one originally in 2022. So those additional projects add to $3,130,000. So with the balance that you have left, if you funded all that has a dollar amount in it, you've talked about a possible $7 million of allocations with still additional things that could happen out of your 8.9, so that would leave about 1.8 if you did everything on this list. And this is just looking at this as if you did everything on here that had a dollar amount in it. So those are the numbers there. There is the MTS contract, you allocated $600,000. So we spent $400,000, that contract has expired. So there is $200,000 there that could be reallocated to something else. But that's included in the numbers.
Okay, so before we move on, is there anything that has been discussed that any of you immediately notices has not been listed on the second page? Okay, we're not holding anybody to the numbers. A lot of them are estimates, but I think one I'm noticing is I don't think the match for the Arias grant is 500,000. Is that right, Tim? I think the award is 500,000, and I'm not sure if there's a match at all. Do you know, Tim?
There would be a 30% match on whatever funds are retained, so it'd be 150,000, I guess.
Okay, but that would potentially be shared across multiple entities.
Now, there are, with our IIJA application for the Gateway project and those funds that are coming out, there is a match that's also associated with that. That could come either out of ARPA or. So if we were to look at the combined total of all of those, the matches for those projects coming out with the countywide sewer study and the infrastructure at the Gateway project and this other stuff, we need 100,000 for the CFA application as well. We could be close to that. That 500,000 could be a combined total of match needed.
Okay, so we can cross off medical facility study and put maybe potential combined grant matches.
So that would take the $100,000 they have listed for the water and sewer.
It should actually be 140 currently, if we get those two grants. They're together with the sewer study. The Crossroads water line was estimated about 1.3 million, so 30% of that.
Hey, Kier, can you just go ahead and repeat that?
Sure.
Hello. So the sewer study, we put in 2 grant applications, presuming that we get both of them, one through Appalachian Regional and the other through the state. We would owe about 140 for that, and then for match. And then the last number I saw for the water system upgrades at the Crossroads site was about 1.3 million. If we were to get that through ARC, it's still a 70-30 split, so 30% of that. Tim says 390 would be
Thank you,
the
Tim.
match there, so the total between the two would be approximately ballpark, a little over 500,000.
Okay. Now, some of those might fall into the potential to use the previously allocated 7.5 million, or assigned or reserved or whatever, $7.5 million towards economic development, which we have not tapped at all yet. Is that right, Terry?
No, we did tap that for something. I can't think right off the top of my head. We did tap that for the, was it the Delta contract, or it could be for the project of the, cleaning up that Area 51. We might have taken that. I'd have to look. I can't think right off the top of my head. I think it's Area 51 that we allocated some funds from that for
Dwight?
the
I
road.
I just, I didn't see that on here, so I assume have at least appropriated something towards us doing that.
We have.
Jan, did you have something? Okay. All right. Anything else we're missing, or any blaring corrections that need to be made with the amounts before Terry tells us about page 3? We're going to come back to this, but yeah, Dwight.
Explain clarity to me, please.
Yeah, Clarity just came and did that presentation to the board and asked for an allocation of $300,000. So that's why it's on there, is it was a request from an outside agency.
I think that probably could be reduced to the 90,000 that they had it separated by their building, and then they wanted the 90,000 to increase pay. And I think it was kind of a general feeling that we didn't want to give them money toward the buildings, that we would be willing to give them money toward the salaries, though.
I think the 90,000 was an allocation they wanted every year.
Oh, okay.
I think that was an annual allocation. I think the 300 was a lump sum, and then they wanted a 90,000 allocation on a yearly basis, if I'm remembering that right. I guess Chris is
And
not
that's
in here.
a non-profit, or
Yep, that's nonprofit, yep.
We did receive a request from the town of Andover too, I believe.
Okay,
We did.
so that's.
That was kind of like an up to request.
Yeah, and I did leave on here the allocation to all municipalities, so that might cover those anyway.
All right,
Mr.
let's-
Chairman, did we have any responses to the 3 or 4 towns and villages that did request money? Did we at least reply to them that you're aware of?
I replied to them in so much as to notify them that it's been received and it's been in the discussions,
Right.
not with any determination by the board.
Thank you for doing that on our behalf.
Okay, let's learn about page 3 and then we'll go backwards.
Page 3 is really something we started in the April presentation, which went through by department, or if you want to say categories, and it just kind of gives a total of the requests that have been identified so far, which is the $7 million. It's not necessarily what we have approved, what the board has approved, or anything, but this is, if you looked at it, these are the different categories that are in our budget of where the allocations would go. But that's just kind of a cheat sheet. That was something that Deb Root had requested to see, maybe how that money was being distributed if you looked at a broader category.
Jan?
When we first got the ARPA money, I believe the department heads were asked if they had any projects they would like to see the money spent. Have we looked back at those and to see if there's any of those that we didn't do that could now maybe be included in this, that had some merit?
We have looked back at that. These are some of the projects that are on this list based on the department head's requests. There were a lot of them that were very small in nature and have been included in budgets, and we have paid for them. We have not updated that list to see exactly what ones have been pushed forward through other funding sources, but this is a result of those conversations and that report, actually. I mean, is that right? Would you agree with that?
You got something?
Thank you.
time comes, I have one I'd like to add to the list.
Let's do it.
Okay, the Bainbridge Farms, the 2,000 cows milking farm, they got a company called LF Bioenergy, Texas-based, wants to come in and spend $20 million setting up a biorefinery to pull the methane out of the cow manure. He pulls all the methane out, whatever they do to make it, and they pipe it right into the gas line. The property's already there, the gas line's already there. And this $20 million project, just to give you a little deal, we just did we're okaying at the IDA an $8.3 million solar project. And probably $1.3 million will be in land, a road and a fence, and the other $7 million is gonna go to China to put up the solar panels. This 20 million bucks is all gonna be sand, gravel, rebar, concrete, pipe. It's all gonna be, you can't buy that in China. You gotta buy all that local. So that's a big influx. The problem being right now, they're still working on is the electric. There's a $3 million bill on that, but they've got that whittled down to $1.5 million. I asked the vice president of this LF biorefinery, you're putting 20 million in, why don't you dump another million in the electric? But they won't, they got to answer to their shareholders, and they're backed by Marathon Oil, so they don't have to worry about going to the bank. They got the money right there. I went and visited one up in North Lawrence, way up by Canada, the one they just finished building. And it's pretty impressive, you know. I watched it, walked through it, I still don't know how, these 3 great big giant swimming pools with towers on them. They do all this mixing, at the end of the day, it's natural gas, pure, right into the line. And they will have 2 employees, LF Bioenergy, this corporation, they employ these people, and they're not little dollar jobs. It'll be 2 full-time employees when it's over. I don't know how many, I couldn't get the number. I'm sure it takes a lot, 'cause I saw a video of them building this place, you know, fast tracking. But it reduces the carbon footprint, takes all the methane out, keeps, that makes, it's a renewable that New York State's allowing, you know, because it's gas, but they like to see this stuff. New York, Schumer's on one of the boards, so is Gillibrand. But right now, they're working, they may have an alternative for the electric. They're still working on it, but if not, that's the heaviest lift. Haven't taken it to the IDA yet. But it's just it's a win-win. You pull the methane out, it cleans up your footprint, then we get natural gas right here produced in Allegheny County. Helps out the farmer too, so
Does it generate any revenue for the county? Would it generate any revenue from the county beyond adding the couple jobs?
I don't
and
know.
benefiting the farmer?
I didn't get a response back. I don't know what they would pay in gas tax and all the, you know, what we would get from doing that. But the guy, he has 42 employees, and farming's not the easiest thing right now. I like to, you know, basically retaining it. Nothing's coming easier anymore. There's going to be more stringent requirements from what I'm hearing from Great Lakes Cheese once they get their new building up. They're going to be pushing all this stuff. Plus, you know, it definitely helps the farmer out. But definitely helps out the county. That $20 million influx can all be spent right here. And I'm not asking for 1.5. They may have another solution. They've spent a lot of money on engineering here, and they're trying to figure out they may have an alternative to that 3-phase that they need at the $3 million price tag. But I just think, keep that in mind. It might be something we could help out with. And I know people say it's an individual, but look at what we're dumping into the crossroads. That's an individual who's going to own the hotel there. We've been putting money in there since long before I came here. We gave the land to the gas station, you know, so we gotta help. This is jobs, this is money. It's
IDA.
20 million bucks. And the IDA's hasn't even been involved yet. I don't know how much, I'm sure there's gonna be a pilot on that. That hasn't even got there, but they gotta get this off the ground. Just wanted to get that on the record. Don't have a dollar figure, but more than $10, so.
Okay, appreciate it. Dwight?
Thank
then
you.
Mike. Dwight, then Mike.
John, the process you looked at, was there just one farm involved, or was there a number of farms that were taking this fluid from?
No, it's one farm. It's a 4,000 acre, or 4,000 milking cow farm, which they call small. I'm surprised they're even dealing with Bainbridge. He's at 2,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he's got 2,000.
But they call themselves Farm First. They're trying to make it work. They're working in a few other places. They're all throughout the country. They've got like 5 other ones going in New York State. But yeah, they don't want to be, I asked them about shipping it, bring it in from other farms, and they frowned on that, putting it on trucks. I don't know if they're worried about spilling.
So
or
if
what?
this farmer goes out of business for some reason, then that facility sits there with no usage, correct? So I'm not saying he's going out of business, I'm just saying that's a focus on one farm, so apparently they've done their homework on his
Right,
capabilities to continue to either expand or,
right.
Stay in
And he seems to
business.
be on the upward trend of expanding. I mean, it was 1,800 when I first met the guy 6 months ago. Now he's got 2,000. I think he's ramping up. He's going to have considerable amount. He's going to have to do a lot of building on his own to house, he's got a couple different farms throughout. He got
Yeah.
4,000 acres in the county, so
they're
They have to-
gonna have to truck someplace.
well, either that or he's going to move his cows there. I don't know all the specifics on it. I just,
Well, thanks for checking that out, that's a.
it was very interesting, and that's another, it'll be our first renewable on gas. We got like 15 solar projects, and like I say, none of the people, I've been on the IDA for a year and a half, and nobody's committed saying, because they do make solar panels in the US, and they always give us, well, we haven't got the contract yet. Well, if they had them from the US, they'd be letting us know, so. This money's all gonna be spent right here. There's pretty much most of it in the county. You can't ship it in, so.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Okay,
Did
thank
you have
you.
something to add, Mike?
Just had a question. You said it was going to result in 2 employees at the biorefinery on the Bainbridge farm. It'd be-
Yeah,
And do they have a market? I mean, you gotta have a pipeline or someplace, or they can tank, do you know what the plan is to market the gas?
yeah, the pipeline runs right through his property or right in front, and is already dealing with, I believe it's NYSEG. So they're on board too, because they're ponying up a little bit on the electric side, doing some, working on the grants for that. So because they're gas and electric.
And I guess my other question was, it seems like that'd be an IDA. Would they get some money coming in there? It seems like that'd be more their the purview than the counties.
I agree, but the county's also funded the IDA so they can do what we want, like a water line and everything else that you can't do through the county. So there's more ways to skin a cat. I just hate to see this project not happen. That's a big influx.
Okay. Add it to the list, Terry. Wait, we're supposed to be eliminating things from the list. Okay. There's 2 things on here we have to discuss today. We'll do the hard one first, and that is, I don't know if we want to call it retention bonuses, but maybe correcting an oversight on the board's part when we did our original retention bonus for employees at the end of last year. Jan has been a strong advocate for the micro part-time people up to whatever. So Jan, why don't you plead your case, and then Terry, I think, has crunched some numbers, but I think what Terry really wants is just some guidance from the board, what we want to do here.
I was approached by a couple different department heads when the bonuses were given out, and mainly by their employees that were part-time and were not included. They're employees of the county. They worked through COVID, specifically the Meals on Wheels drivers. One of them missed it by an hour a week, so he got nothing. and he worked hard too. And I have felt very strongly since this happened that they should have been included somehow, even if it's a different amount or whatever, but I think that they should have been recognized. And I still feel that very strongly. So I really, really encourage us to do something about compensated those part-time employees that were here at the time that the original bonus was given out. I know it's probably going to be hard to go back and figure that out and figure out how much. I had prepared a sample resolution off of the original resolution, and Terry and Carissa had looked at it and said, you know, there were some issues with it, and they were going to try to adjust it or whatever. So I would really like to see us not put this off any longer. I'd like to see it get done. Thank you.
Okay, so we know there are complications surrounding this, okay? And there's not just one or two, and it is complicated. But I'm confident that it's doable. So can you tell us, Terry, what did we do last year exactly?
You gave out a bonus.
Mike, please.
Sorry. Yep, sorry, I turned that off. The bonus resolution from last year was every employee who worked an average of 20 hours a week, up to a regular full-time employee, basically got a percentage of $1,000 bonus. So full-time employees all got $1,000. Part-timers were calculated based on a percentage of that, down to 20 hours of average per week. So if you worked less than 20 hours a week, you did not get the bonus.
Okay, so let me highlight a couple complications, and you tell me the rest of them. One is that it's a different workforce now than it was back then. People come, people go. There's seasonal employees that are active right now that weren't active at the time of the original bonus. That's a complication. And then there will be perhaps a hint that however we do it will be perceived as unfair. In other words, if you take anyone under 20 hours all the way down to the guy or girl that worked 1 hour last year and gave them a flat amount, there's a perception that that's inappropriate, perhaps. I don't see how you could do it any other way other than a flat amount from 20 hours on down. I'm going to put my opinion out there and then let the board discuss it. My opinion is we take the simplest path possible to correct the error, omission, not error, omission, that where we failed to recognize our very important part-time employees, set a flat amount for everyone under that 20-hour threshold all the way down to 0 hours. Pay that amount, thank those employees for their valuable service, and move on. I don't know how much that is. Do you have any concept, Terry, based on a couple different, amounts?
Well, it really depends on how you are going to look at the list. There were several, well, and that's a question. That seriously is a question. I heard your question saying that legislators qualify as part-time employee, and that's true. Legislators would be in that list of part-time employees, which would have to be defined. When the list was prepared last year for you to approve, there were several part-timers that did get the bonuses, and they got a percentage of the 1,000. There was approximately 74 employees that were on the books at the time that did not get the bonus. They worked anywhere from 19 hours per week down to 0.08 hours per week. So you're talking there's a huge variety of average hours worked. There are also, at this time, obviously this list is old. There are people that have left. I'm not sure, I did not go in that deep to see how many are still active on the rolls. Right now, if we wrote a check today, I don't know how many of them are active employees. If you look at that list today, you've got all the summer help, all the summer youth, all the Board of Elections people have been put on our rolls, which is 150-some people. So you would need to determine what you are going to do with all of those active part-timers at this point in time. Obviously, if you looked at the list, 74 employees at flat amount. Brooke threw out a couple flat amount options. It's not a lot of money if you look at $100 a person, but you're looking at fairness. I don't know. I don't know how you want to look at it. That's your call on that. If you look at them as a percentage of the 1,000, that 74 individuals would allocate just under $20,000 to pay them based on the same premise that you used for the other employees in 22.
You mean if you scaled?
If you scaled that down, that means you'd be writing checks for, $500, close to $500 to $2.08. So,
John?
I kind of agree with Brooke to take the quickest way out. We got to pick a date, the date we gave it to the other ones, the people who were employed here then. We always had a thing called, back in my working days, you came in with your eyes wide open, knowing what? Nobody took this job so they get a $200 bonus that they heard that we didn't even give. So whoever was here on that date, those are the ones who get whatever we decide. So we don't have to worry about anybody new.
They may not even be in the payroll, some of them.
correct.
I guess, $2, I would say anybody that's gonna get less than $50, they get $50. I mean, just as a number, because you can't be writing checks for $2. That just makes no sense. I think that
That were active at the time.
I think that you can do,
It depends on what
you did
they-
down to 20 hours, so obviously
Well,
that's
between-
part-time. So it seems to me like you could do the same type of thing, but instead of starting with a full-time employee, you're starting with somebody that worked less than 20 hours and do the same thing that you did with those employees. And I think at this point, they're gonna be happy just to have that recognition and to get something that they weren't left out of that recognition. I think that almost means as much as the money.
I see what you're saying, John. I don't think you want to go to that back date. I think if you're going to do it, you set a date in the future and you say, on this date, current employees on this date receive, and those people that are no longer employed by the county, just missed out, unfortunately. I don't see how you go back and determine their current status. Their hours may be vastly different today than they were at that date last year. I think you have to go with your current workforce. And we will have a couple people probably slide through the cracks, but all we can say is we're doing the best we can to recognize as many county employees as possible. And I think you set a flat amount. I don't think you go down that road and force the treasurer's office into attempting to apply some sliding scale from 10 to 20, and then a flat amount from under 10, and then a different flat amount under 5. I don't think you want to go down that road. Carissa?
The other thing I noted, we did know who would be eligible if we went down this road last year. And it ranged from people that had a maximum of 19.96 hours to 0.083 hours. And there were really 4 people that had less than 1 average hour of work. So I just would think we would want to clarify that this is for anybody that worked at all, or do you want a minimum of an hour or something? Because at 0.0 is very low.
I would be inclined to say it all, because the whole reason we're here is because we missed people. And you never know, that .0083 time might have been so important to the operations of this county. Gary?
What percentage we're talking about less than 5 hours?
Less than 5 hours a week is, well, I can tell you less than 10 hours a week is probably 35 people, probably. It's probably half my list is less than 10 hours a week. And when I say less than 10 hours, it goes anywhere from 9 to, like Carissa said, .08. I mean, that's where, that's why, I guess, you drew the line with 20 hours a week before, is because these people might have come in, hated their job, and left that very same day. Or they might have been a person who was on call and just needed to fill in for some guy who might have had an appointment and he had to come in. It was a part-timer or whatever, or
Retirees.
retirees. Some of them are retirees. Some of them are part-time 911, part-time jail. OFA obviously is the big one. There's only a few election people on here because we did not have all the coordinators and inspectors on the list. You know, it's really up to you guys, but, I mean, if you're gonna go back, I think we've gotta use the same list that we used to generate the original bonuses, and if they're not active, they don't get one. And if you wanna do a flat rate, you know, you can pick a rate, 74 people at the most is what you're gonna pay. $50 is $3,700. I mean, it's not talking a lot of money. It's talking 74 checks added to a payroll that's gonna be, you know, direct deposit. Are they direct deposit? Are they not direct deposit? That's where the frustration will come on our end. It's not that it's not doable, but it's just an added for $2.08.
Adam's been waiting patiently, then Gary.
Just want to throw this out, it's the way I think. I'd like to request a straw poll and no further discussion for two simple reasons. We're spending $5.40 per second discussing this, and the clock is ticking. The other reason is these people have been waiting 9 months for a decision. I like what the chairman had to say, and I would be in favor of that.
Okay, before we close discussion, Gary.
Part-time employees, seasonal employees, lifeguards, and so on and so forth. They're included in what you're talking about.
If they were active at the date we did it, which I want to say was December 1st. I'm not really sure of the date. We paid them out, I think, December 22nd. So they were active at that point in time. I do not believe that lifeguards were active at that time. But, you know, there's a lot of hit or miss on here, whether they were processed out, whether they weren't processed out. I mean, didn't dig that far into the people.
So we're talking about a particular date.
Correct.
If they were working at that time.
If they were an active employee at a certain date is what I would suggest, because otherwise it's gonna be too hard.
But
They're all
so
over the place, I guess.
election and people would be not included.
They were not included in this list. There are a few election people, like they're standard people. The commissioners are
Yeah.
on here, like Brent and Mike are on here, and the two
But
staff.
I'm talking about the people that
The
are hired
actual
just for election.
inspectors and coordinators
Okay.
were not on this list at that time.
So I don't know how you can do it, but I think that nobody that is only what I would call a seasonal employee or a temporary employee, in other words, they don't work year-round, should be included.
Thank you. Jan?
I understand the complications, but again, I feel very, very strongly that this needs to be done, and it needs to be done as soon as possible. I'm sorry it's gonna create more work for you guys, but I really feel strongly this needs to be done. And I'm sure there's a way we can come up with, you know, I agree, I don't see writing a check for $2 in some sense, that makes no sense. I think you have to have a minimum amount that you're gonna give those people, rather than write a check that just is crazy. They don't, what's the sense in sending them a check for $2? But I think that there's a way to do it, and I just really am very strongly believe in doing this, and I think it's the right thing to do.
All right, Jan. So throw out a structure for board consideration.
I don't have my resolution with me. I wish I had, because that did give a structure very similar to the original resolution. I think it was like anybody less, the example that Terry gave, like, there was a gentleman that worked 19.96 hours. He got nothing. That's not fair. I mean, you know, how can you, I know you needed a line, but good heavens. And he was very upset that he didn't get any bonus. So I think those people, I think you need to look at anything from 20 hours down to 5 hours, or maybe 10 hours gets a flat rate, and anyone 10 hours and less gets a different flat rate. Then everybody's acknowledged, compensated in some way, and let them know that we appreciated their work during COVID just as much as we appreciate the people that work 20 hours and up.
And would you do that from the previous date?
I would do it they would have to have been employed at the time we did the original bonus.
Okay, so there's Jan's proposal.
Okay.
You'd set two flat amounts, one from 20 to 10 hours, which would be what, Jan, $100?
No, I'd give them 500 and then 250.
That's gonna be more than what those people qualified as.
Oh, okay, well, then the same
full-time. I
amount.
think that if you're gonna do it and you wanna do it that much money, then you might better pay off the $1,000.
Well,
a
then I
percentage
would
of
do
the
it the same
$1,000.
as we did before
Because I
then.
think that's too high, I think, because that's what some of those people got who worked 20 hours and above.
Terry, what was the minimum amount we paid out on a full, or on an employee 20 hours or above?
For a part-timer that qualified, I do have that with me, just a second. The lowest amount was $535. $535, and they worked an average of 21.43 hours. $535 was the lowest we paid to a part-timer who qualified, who had worked 21.43 hours. I think, Jan, your argument, to have two different dollar amounts again is still gonna skew it, because just like the guy who missed it, this person's gonna miss this 10 hours by 0.3. So you're gonna have the same argument, you either do it all, or you do none of them, I guess,
But
is
the
my point.
difference is, they're gonna get something, where before, those people under 20 hours got nothing.
All right, there's the proposal. You want to amend that 500, 250 to something else?
Yeah, we'll definitely amend that. I guess, I think use the same formula as you used before. That, to me, would be the fair thing to do. That way you're treating them exactly like you treated everybody else.
Until what dollar amount? So you don't get that $2.80 check? Or until what, I guess until what hours, hourly average?
I guess if you work less than 5 hours, just like a $50 flat rate, if that sounds good.
The 1 hour person would get $25 based on the percentage. That's the lowest. Because we already had that calculated if we paid everyone. So the person who works 25 hours or 1 hour a week would get $25. Then there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 under $25. So you could say they get a minimum of $25 and up, I guess.
Yeah, that would make sense.
If you're gonna pay all those people who didn't work an hour a week, $25, then, if you wanna give them something.
All right, so are there any,
That's gonna cost you $20,000 plus tax, though, just so you know that.
real quick, Gary.
Part-time employees. Why are they part-time employees? The reason I ask is, are they part-time employees because that's all that they want to work, or because the job doesn't require more than a part-time? If it's because they only want to work a part-time job, I don't think we should pay them anything, myself.
So you did already pay some part-time employees, right? So any part-time, we would consider anything less than 7 hours. So you might have part-time, you've got some part-time department heads out there. They work less than 7 hours. They might work 6 hours a week. And then you have people that are just, they're more or less filling in or volunteering, kind of like a paid volunteer for positions. So I think there's maybe a couple different levels of part-time out there.
All right, so,
I think an example, Gary, is your Board of Elections. They're not full-time department heads because the job doesn't require a full-time. It's not because necessarily they don't want to work full-time. That's just what the job requires. And I think there's many other positions that are the same, that the job, there's always part-time jobs in different areas, whether it's government or whatever. So I don't think it has anything to do with them wanting to work part-time or not. I think that's all the job requires.
Gary, microphone, please.
Talking about commissioners, that is a part-time, but there's a full-time staff that works over there also.
All right, point taken. So, are there any objections from anyone on this board, Jan, to get with admin and Terry, pull out the abacus, come up with something put it in the form of resolution and bring it back to whatever the relevant committee would be.
I would encourage that.
Please.
Okay, all right, so there's one. All right, the other one we gotta cover, and we might be able to do this one quickly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are the requests from municipalities for funding. So all I'm going to do is try to run down the list of who we've gotten requests from. That's the town of Ward made a request for support that was not a particular dollar amount, but was for a particular project, which I believe was shoring up the foundation of their town building. We got a request from the town of Scioto to support their bicentennial celebration. We got a request from the town of Andover, which did detail some projects and purchases they wanted for an amount up to somewhere in the neighborhood of $325,000. Am I missing any? We had discussed in public session the potential for taking a piece of the ARPA money and providing funding directly to towns. Either, I think originally our discussion was to restrict that funding to outdoor recreation purposes or tourism purposes. I think we got away from that and discussed the possibility of just giving a flat dollar amount to each municipality, regardless of size, and letting them do with it what they will. So that's the history. Does anyone want to speak in favor of providing funding to towns with ARPA money? Adam?
Me, I would be in favor of it because towns and villages have a lot more struggles than the county. The county has a large tax base, a lot of infrastructure, and a lot of safe havens to help support it. I'm not talking a large amount of money, but anything would be a help to improve the towns and villages where ultimately is going to improve the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barnes?
Didn't towns and villages get their own ARPA funds?
They did.
And so what they're doing is they're asking for a second double dipping, I guess.
That would be one way to look at it.
Thank you.
Mr. Stockton?
The money that was given to towns was based on the population of the town, so some of them got, just to be bluntly honest about it.
Sarah, did you get that? Okay, thank you. Dwight?
Yeah, I agree. I think if we're going to do it for one, we need to do it for all. So if we just come up with whether it's 25,000 or 50,000, and give it to each one of the towns and one and done, be done with it.
That's my opinion too. I think it's a fair thing to do. A lot of our poorer towns, that make a lot of difference to them. And they all didn't receive the same amount of ARPA funding either, but quite a few of them have a lot of responsibilities they have to take care of.
Gretchen, then Carissa's got a point to make.
As you know, that's been one thing that I've really hoped that we would be looking into a little bit more, whether we decided on what the amount was or not. And I concur with our other legislators saying that many of them don't get as much or they don't have as many resources. I think the difficult part would be is what the amount is and how far it would go for some of their projects, at least it would be. But I think when we talked about it before, Terry, wasn't it best to give one amount and not have any kind of reporting as part of that, according to the ARPA restrictions, or?
It was better not to support a project that would have to be reported.
Okay.
It was better to just give a lump sum and, it's $1 million if you want to give $25,000 to all 40 municipalities.
Right, that's towns and villages.
That's towns and villages.
Correct.
Carissa?
That was actually my question. If you were looking at just towns or towns and villages, that does change the number significantly. And although you have those ARPA requests, in writing, I've had a number of phone calls from other towns and villages expressing interest, wanting to know. They'd heard that we were giving money away, and I said, no decision's been made, but I do think there's villages and towns that are interested in this.
Thank you. Adam?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak again on this matter. I know it's a long conversation on how to be decisive on what's fair and equal and by populations, but what would really be a disjustice, and I know $1 million is a lot of money, but we just went through the ARPA and we still have half of our money not spent yet. We would have to at least set a minimum standard, in my opinion, that we did with the town of Wellsville with the airport. So I believe we gave $50,000 to them. So anything less or not at par, I think would be a miscarriage of justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan?
I don't think we need to give them that much personally. I know from personal experience with the town of Alfred how much we got, and we struggled to spend it in our little town. We actually have not already spent all of our ARPA money. So to give them more money that they have to figure out how to spend, I don't think I think 50,000 is way too much. That's just my personal opinion. I think it'd be very nice and generous. It's a good sign, good relations to give them something, but I don't think 50,000, I think that's way too much.
Carissa, let's do Carissa, then Dwight, then Adam.
I have a question based off of what Jan said. And Terry, I don't know if you know it, 'cause I'm not sure, we might have to reach out. Do they actually have to spend the money by a certain date, or is it just our spending and writing the check that's good enough?
I think it's our spending. I don't think they're obligated to the project deadline of 26. I think it's our spending that has to be done by, we have to allocate by 24, spend by 26. I don't think they're held to the same obligation because it's really like a donation.
It's a donation or a gift, okay.
We can check on that though, but I don't believe there's any restriction on that.
Dwight?
Yeah, I guess, in my mind, I think 25,000 would be appropriate. I think 50 is a little overkill. But I do think we need to treat each town equal. And, like I said, do it one and done, and that's my point.
Does it mean we're lowering Wellsville to 25,000?
Not, you mean the airport? Nice try, Mike.
Well, that's a town, of Wellsville, but,
That's a separate agreement.
well, if Dwight's making that motion, 25,000 to all municipalities, I'll second that.
I'd like to have further discussion before because I don't believe Mr. Fenton made a motion where it would be acceptable to make a second yet. For the progress of further discussion, maybe we can talk a little bit, Ms. Burdick. I somewhat agree and respect what you said of 25,000, but let's be practical. 25,000 doesn't really make an impact on a town or village. That might give you some street signs or some markings on pavement. It's going to be very insignificant. We actually want to have an impact where maybe they have a project that would make a difference to their town or village or the community and ultimately the rest of the county. And I think 25,000 would just end up in the coffers and there wouldn't be any real project that would make a significant impact on their community. 50,000 probably would. That's all. Thank you.
Jan, would you care to respond before we go to Dwight?
Yeah, go ahead.
I totally disagree, but I don't think any amount we give them is going to complete, one of their projects. Look at the towns that did request money. They weren't asking for 50, they were asking for way more than that. And I don't think it's the county's responsibility to pay for a town's project. I think we are being kind to share our money with them, which I think is a goodwill thing. But any amount we give them, I think they're going to be thankful for. So I think 25 is plenty.
If we go back in the history books.
I'm sorry, Adam. Dwight?
I can tell you from experience, I was supervisor for the town for a number of years, and if somebody would have given me $25,000, I can double seal a lot of highway for $25,000. So I'll make that motion that we give them $25,000 each and every one.
So Dwight, are you making a motion for the administrative team to draft a resolution to allocate $25,000 per town and village, directly fund them from the ARPA money?
That's correct.
And I'm seconding it.
Okay, we
Can
have a
another
motion, a
motion be
second.
made for 50?
We can open it up for discussion and you can offer up an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would you like to do so?
Yes, I would take this advantage to be for discussion and make an amendment, and I would like to amend that to 50,000 per town and village in Allegheny County, New York.
Okay, motion to amend. Is there a second? Okay, seeing none. Any further discussion? Now, again, we'll get another opportunity to vote on this. We'll also get another opportunity to amend it between now and when this gets through the board. Correct? Committee and, yeah, Mr. Sakin.
One other option for spending that money that hasn't been mentioned, but it came into play in our town. Bonuses adjustments of salary to retain employees. Just like the county's struggling with employees, so do the towns in their highway departments. And some money like that little would become big in terms of bonus for 2 or 3 employees. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Fred? Not really? Lammo?
Well, I do know that many municipalities with their money gave those bonuses. And a lot of them made a comment, like Jan said, they can't spend them, so that's what they spent their money on. They gave it to their employees, and I mean every employee. So that's their bonus, just like we've done. I don't believe we're going to do it again.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You
Yes.
you have a motion in a second on the $25,000.
Yep.
So your discussion should be on the motion in the second that's on the floor. So if the bonuses are part of that discussion, that's fine, but I just want to remind you all that that's what you have on the floor at the moment.
Okay.
For discussion.
Okay, I think he was referring to town retention bonuses and the
Okay.
benefit of the town's ARPA money.
Okay, just to,
Thanks.
just so you're all aware.
Appreciate
All right,
that.
thank you.
Anything further?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, any further discussion on the motion? Do you want to do a roll call on this one? Let's do a roll call.
Mr. Barnes?
$25,000, aye.
Mrs. Burdick?
Yes.
Mr. Curran?
Yes.
Mr. Seer?
Mr. Chairman, is discussion done after the vote?
It is. Once we've called for the vote, the discussion is
I'm going
concluded.
to call for that, and I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Mr. Demick?
Yes.
Mr. Fenton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanchett?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Havey?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricky?
Yes.
Mrs. Ricketts Swales?
Yes.
And Mr. Stockin?
Yes?
12 ayes, 1 abstaining, 2 absent.
The motion is approved. Thank you all. There's some money spent. Well, not quite yet. Okay, so does that clear up the town stuff? Can we,
Can we have discussion, Mr. Chairman?
on what?
I asked if I needed to make a vote first, and then we could have discussion.
It's no longer, that agenda item's no longer on the table. When it comes to committee and gets brought up in committee, it can be brought up for further discussion. Unless you
Yeah.
want to add it as an additional
May I
agenda.
take this opportunity just to mention something?
Sure.
So unless my math is totally wrong, we just gave the town of Wellsville $75,000, and then we gave every town and village 25.
Would you stop that?
Would you please turn your mic when
Mr.
you address
Barnes,
me?
Mr. Barnes, Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
you've not been recognized. If you have a calm rebuttal to Mr. Sears' claim, please state so.
So I want Wellsville to be treated, I'm for
Mr. Sear,
Wellsville.
Mr. Sear, Mr. Barnes has the floor.
My objection to your comment is the town of Wellsville, for the Wellsville Airport, which is a service for the whole county, not just Wellsville. That's the reason that we, over the last few years, have donated or given to the town of Wellsville $50,000 to help maintain the Wellsville Airport. That's completely separate from what we're talking about right now.
I disagree, sir.
Well, it is.
So I represent District 3.
Adam, let me interrupt you here. So we kind of fly kind of loose around here in terms of the rules of order. In a situation like this that is contested and emotional, I think it's important that you direct your comments to the chair. I don't think it's effective use of our time or appropriate for you two to be directing your comments to each other. So I'm happy to continue the conversation, but for the remainder of this conversation, please direct your comments to the chair. Mr.
Chair, may I
Seer.
have the mic? Thank you. Mr. Barnes, I completely respect that you're going to bat for your town and your district. If you did anything less, I wouldn't respect you. So we have that in common. Let's just start at that point. But the record reflects the town of Wellsville got $75,000, or is going to after this passed. And Bolivar, Scioto, Willing, Wirt got 25. I've never came to you asking for 50,000 for Bolivar to do something because I claim everybody goes through the hub of Bolivar and they use the whole whatever. I don't use the airport in Wellsville. I don't know anybody in District 3 that does. I respect your position on that, but I just want it stated on the record, am I right or wrong? The town of Wellsville got $75,000 of ARPA money, and every other town and village got 25. Is that correct or incorrect?
So you cannot pose a question like that to Mr. Barnes. Your objection is noted. Mr. Barnes, if you have anything further to say to the chair regarding this issue, please do so. Otherwise, we're going to move on.
Let's move on.
Thank you.
Thank you for the freedom.
Okay. Yes, okay. Excellent. Mr. Demick would like to bring up a couple items that are listed on page 2.
We've had the new roof and the windows for the county office building on a list for quite some time. Is there a reason we can't move on and get this bid or whatever we need to do instead of waiting at all? And if so, what do we need to do? Do we need to bring something to Public Works in the very near future to go out to bid or what? But I'd like to see this get in motion.
I think as far as ARPA money, I think that's the board's choice. If you want to make a motion to go forward on a project, then that takes the next step, which would then be saying, okay, we've got to go out to bid on what this would cost. But if your intentions is to allocate money towards a new roof and windows, then I think you need to state that and get that on the record, and then it moves forward with the next step, which would be for quotes and bids.
Carissa.
I think there are a number of DPW projects that aren't on this list that they put in their budget submission that are probably better ARPA projects. We've discussed some of them. One would be the new fire alarm system. I think putting some money into new equipment was another one. And those are just the DPW ones. I think there are other things. We talked about doing a countywide salary study for our union members and other things that haven't made this, because these are just the ones that you have made some sort of commitment to and discussion to wanting to hear more. But I think you'll find a lot of things in your budget, tentative budgets, that are really ARPA requests, just to let you know, because you did bring up the DPW one. I know they have more projects that they would probably like ARPA consideration for.
Mr. Healy.
Where are we on the new DPW facility?
I think that is going to be hashed out among the space needs study results. Is that right, Mr. Demick?
Right, they're doing that's part of the space needs to where they do the evaluation. They have not got there yet, so.
Okay, thank you.
Back to the conversation about whether this would be in the budget or not. If you chose to move forward with whatever's on this list or whatever you have, then we know what we need to just take out of that budget. We are not aware of all the projects that are in there. We have not examined each detail in the budget as of right now. They were just turned in, and in light of everything else that has happened around the county for the last couple weeks, there are still some departments that have not submitted their budgets. So we are not at the point where we could actually say to you, this is in the budget, we think, yeah, ARPA money could be spent on that. But if there is projects like this, I mean, I think that you make the indication that you want to move forward on them, it's a good time to get that. So then, if Tom does have them in the budget, we would be able to cut them immediately.
Well, give me one sec, Jen. Why don't we consider asking you to get with the Department of Public Works, determine what exactly they did put in their budget and what they didn't, and then Carissa, could you ask them to prioritize all of these projects and what they think is maybe front burner, what's back burner, and then between you as budget officer and Terry as deputy, determine which of those projects, after you've seen, their ranking, are most appropriately allocated through ARPA?
I think we can work on that. I don't think that's an easy process, just to let you know that that's going to take some time.
Well, we can't, it's a necessary process because this board doesn't want to put money where, put money into DPW that isn't a priority of theirs, or at least a front burner of theirs, and we don't want to allocate ARPA money if the money would be more appropriately allocated from somewhere else.
I can tell you that that's not going to be, from my standpoint, that's not going to happen for a month and a half.
Yeah. No.
It's just not going to happen till at least the end of September.
Well, it's got to get hashed out in the budget.
It does, but it's going to be a long process. That's part of that budget process, but that is not something that we would be able to even come back to you until the tentative.
My point being is, there's a whole lot more to bidding a roof than just allocating the funds. It takes a long time to put that together, put it out for a bid, and you don't have to award it until we know where our funds are coming from. That's what I'm talking about, I guess. Is that something we should do, or?
Yeah, as from DPW standpoint, we certainly know that the roof needs to be replaced, and we know that the air conditioning system really needs to have an upgrade. So, Fred, I'm with you on at least on the roof and the air conditioning. If we got firm numbers on that, at least we ought to at least go to bid and find out if our numbers that we've appropriated are sufficient.
I think they've already done some of that research. I'm not necessarily sure it needs to be bid. Some of these things, like the HVAC, the fire control system, were actually cooperative purchases that we have joined a cooperative purchasing group, and we've been working with, I think it was Stark Industries, not from Ironman, but Stark something or other, on some of these quotes and prices. So I believe they're gathering that information, and they had some of that around to put some of that information in the budget, knowing that that probably would be more appropriate for ARPA, because those amounts are just so high, it would be hard to keep them in the budget.
I'm just figuring if we have our ducks in a row, I'd like to have a mindset that next year, come construction season, some of these things will be getting done when the season's right. And not coming into that season and trying to deal with it then. I just think we'd be better served if we get our ducks in a row, and, if it's within your budget process that we figure that out, that's fine. But just.
Well, why don't we just target those two items, say roof, windows, ask Tom to, I don't know where the air conditioning thing.
I'd ask Tom to prioritize what his needs are, because I'm not sure they are roof and windows.
Okay, well, that's what I said.
Yep.
I know the roof's got like 19 holes in it that they've tried to patch and have patched and went on, but.
Think they have some new information maybe on the roof system since the last time I talked to you guys. So I think maybe what they thought was on this roof might be, actually it's the adjacent roof that's worse, so.
Okay.
That's probably what I'm talking about, because I just recently talked to him, so. All right, we'll get on the same page with that. I think so.
Let's do this. Can you ask Tom to bring a couple priority projects in that price range to the board for consideration of allocation of ARPA money?
Yes, what would you like done with the other departments that did the same thing?
Well, we're up against it. Those are on the agenda for future ARPA discussions. Okay. We're running, yes, John.
I just wanted, I agree. Sorry. Seems like basic maintenance that we need to work on. So
I just wondered about the countywide trail master plan that seems to address the whole county, and it's not a ton of money. Is that something that we could maybe get through quick?
I know that that's been selected by Southern Tier West as one of their priority projects. So I think it's promising, I believe, that that's going to be funded from the outside. So I think we're in like a holding pattern on that, not to bring up airports again. Gretchen?
The other thing I think that has been on our list, and I just said, I know we've talked about it many times, we're kind of mandated to update our election machines for the Board of Elections. And that would be an easy one to,
That's one I think has full board support. We're also in a holding pattern on that one because we're awaiting to get the bid specs for that to put it out for RFP. Is that correct? Yeah, so I think that's one, yeah, that I think we did have full board support on. Hate to do this, but we're going to need about 5 more minutes in executive session to close out this meeting. And then I want to also remind you that AmeriCorps is here today to do our working lunch. Starting at 12 o'clock, they're going to give us a presentation about some of the stuff they do. So that is going to be a fun time. So would anyone care to make a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the employment of a particular individual? Motion is made by legislator Seer, seconded by legislator Hanchett. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed? And we're in executive session.